Plane and Supergirl.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to The Krypton Report.
And you're listening to Krypton Report.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird!
It's a plane! It's the Krypton Report!
The All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Welcome to the Krypton Report, and happy spring, everybody. As of the recording of this, it is the second day of spring, and you know what? It did feel kind of nice today. Once the rain stopped, and it was sunny for a while, and then the wind came back. But you know what? It's Ohio, and that's what it's like. So, with me today, as always, the voice of reason, the voice of power, the essence of being at the gym, Mr. James Cole. Welcome, James.
Hey, Tyler. Yeah, I am kind of the voice of reason, huh?
I mean, yeah. And I
could agree with that.
Because with us always for this episode,
you gotta look at it from all different angles, you know.
We have.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Bryan. Hi, Bryan.
Can you give me
Oh, hey, kids. How's it going?
It's going. It's going. So, with it being the start of spring, we're going to do something that I've been wanting to do for, I think, almost 2 years now, but just timing, we never got to kind of time it just right. We're going to start our review of Superman for all seasons. And it is a story written by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sales as the art, the team that brought you the great story that is Batman Long Halloween, Dark Victory. And yeah, so we're going to do a chapter of this each season. So it is spring, so it's time to do the first story that's spring. But before we get into this, here's a question I want to pose to you guys. I was thinking about this today. I was listening to some other podcasts, and they were talking about, people love talking about these different Batman stories and all this. And I got thinking, one thing I think that a lot of people might have with Superman and his stories is it seems that, and I'm not saying me personally, I'm just saying general public, they don't care about a Superman story if it's not something to do with his origin or his death. When you talk about, Superman stories, those usually seem to be, where everything falls. Think about just the Superman stories that people want to see adapted or talk about or that's really been. It's always like an origin or his death. What do you guys think?
Wow. You're kind of blowing my mind here. This is stuff I never really thought about.
Because even Red Sun is an origin.
It is. All Seasons is origin, birthrights. Yeah, dude, you're right. I don't know. I mean, that's not particularly what I want.
That's what I'm saying. It's not me. It's not my opinion. I was thinking about general masses. When you look at Superman stories that have been adapted, or storylines about that people talk about, you got to read this Superman or this. What are the best Superman stories to read? They come because even All-Star Superman's about his death. It touches on his origin, but it's mainly about him dying. Man of Steel, John Byrne is a retelling of his origin in a reboot. And even looking at my DC animated films that I have right here,
yeah,
I look at Superman. That's a Superman and Batman film. All-Star Superman, death. Superman Shazam, it's a team-up film, different. Superman versus the Elite, one that's not about death or origin. Superman, Unchained, or Unbound, sorry, is, based off the Jeff Johns run. So there's two of them that aren't about his death or origin of the film adaptations. And then the rest of them are all team-up or Justice League films. And then we get the death of Superman twice, might I add, in these animated films. So yeah, just kind of a, just something to think about there, fellas.
So I think I now I gotta challenge myself. Like, is there any Superman story out there that is not about his death or his origin that is awesome? I mean, personally, you're totally right. Like, I'm going in my head, and every Superman story that I love, it's either an origin or death. All-Star Superman, absolutely love it. All about death. Man, wow. But every Batman story I love, it's not an origin.
Because it comes at you from a mystery. Man, James, you've been awfully silent over there. What do you got to say?
I say that is ridiculous. If that's what people are wanting, that they have no, I don't know. They have no concept of Superman. Like, these characters, especially Superman, 80 years, Batman, 80 years, they're more than their origin and their death. Superman is the widest known. If you show that shield to anybody from here to friggin' Timbuktu, they're going to know who it is.
Oh, and I agree with you.
So,
but I was thinking about when they come to adapting stories and telling stories in other mediums. I mean, even look at our latest film series. We got Man of Steel, Origin. Batman v Superman ended up being Death. And then Justice League was kind of Rebirth. The Return. So, I mean, even right there in those films, granted, Justice League will toss aside. But I started thinking about this. Gosh, I can't talk. It's late. When I was doing the survey that came with Red Sun, and they were asking, like, what, they'll say, what characters do you want to see more of? Or what stories would you like to see adapted? And I started putting stuff in, and I'm like, and then they bring up a whole list that people recommended. And I'm like, man, everything with Superman seems like it's some sort of like Elseworlds, origin, or death story. I mean, if we look at, but I'm not including like team up books like Kingdom Come. It's a Justice League. I mean, Superman's the main focal of it, but it's still all characters.
right.
But I mean, there are great stories that aren't like that. But I'm looking at what the general populace thinks of, and maybe we've done that to ourselves. Not us, but just we've highlighted only like, oh, we can only tell his origin to make it an impact over and over. And it's sad because even the book we're going to look at today is an Elseworlds origin tale.
Yeah. I mean, it's messed up to say because some of the greatest writers has had good hands in crafting great origin stories. I mean, some people love Secret Origin by Jeff Johns, Jeff Loeb for All Seasons, Birthright, Mark Waid on Birthright, and just to kind of name a few. And then you've got obviously you've got the death of Superman, and you've got All-Star. See, now All-Star is a death story because that's where it leads, but in all honesty, I think that it's a celebration of all things Superman, Gold and Silver Age Superman in particular. So just I don't know. There are tons of stories about Superman over the years, and some major impactful stories. I mean, there's Kingdom Come, which is an Elseworld story. There's the man who has everything. What's so funny about Truth and Justice in the American Way? The movies. I mean, Superman Brainiac, the story turned into Superman Unbound, Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, and Apocalypse. So, I mean, there's tons of good stories that people are missing out on. I just feel that every time they start something, they always have to start with an origin for some reason. I mean, Batman, we know. Superman, we know. Spider-Man, we know. They don't need to do that. Like Homecoming, they just kind of jumped right in. They didn't even go over it in Civil War, you know.
And I proved that, that's something they can do with these characters. And, I mean, even Batman 89, we didn't really get a straight origin tale.
Yeah, it wasn't an origin tale. It was just in the beginning of his career because he was an urban legend.
It was just something I was thinking of earlier when I was thinking about, famous Superman stories that people talk about. Most of them are,
you can't, right. Just the one thing about it is, there's been many great stories over the years throughout his career that weren't origin or death, but, you can't help the fact that some great writers have made some really great stories that take place at that particular point in his life and his career. So, I mean, that's just the writers who have done it and who did such a great job. So,
my wife brought up a pretty good point as I was doing some research. She said it's because movies have made people desire a beginning and an end, not like a straight saga like comic books do. They're used to different styles, different actors. All these studios want trilogies, and they don't understand the story from the comics that they're trying to interpret. They don't understand story arcs. It's all, let's start a story, maybe we'll throw an end together. And you have all these stories not written by comic book writers, or really maybe even lover of comics. You just have people looking to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't say I can't argue her there. Now I did some research. What are like ranked by people and fans the top Superman stories? And I have a list of about 15 here, and we got 15. We got Superman 2, then we got Birthright, then we got Man of Steel, Secret Origin, Superman All Seasons. Just going up this list, I see one that I haven't read yet. Pretty much the only one on the list that really is an origin story, but it's called Superman Last Son, and I completely forgot about this story.
Yeah, it's not bad. I read that one, but I'm just saying, outside of comics, those are the Superman stories it seems that people do. But anyways, that was just a thought, so it's not the end of the world.
So it's a general audience point of view, the beginning, middle, and end. The fact is, even the general audience knows the beginning of Superman, and they don't need to do it again. You don't need to start Superman at the death of Krypton, crashing in Smallville, and growing up. We know that. Everybody knows.
So James, where would you say that they should start it then? Where would you start it then? Him meeting Lex Luthor for the first time?
Well, I mean, it's
maybe this is a different.
I would already start it. I would start early. You want to start. Yeah, you want to. I mean, I don't want to start. So if I was to make if I was going to be making more of a long line of movies or something, or say a series, because these characters lend themselves well to long form storytelling. But it would start fairly early on, but not origin. He'd already be in Metropolis. He'd be Superman doing his thing. Probably doing, more of the natural disasters and saving people and stuff like that. But we'd get our first supervillain, and Lex would be involved, but I wouldn't put Lex as the first supervillain, because I think he's too intelligent to be the first one out the gate and be taken down right away.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely agree.
So just as a broad opening there, that's how I would do that. To pick a villain to start with, you can do all kinds of them. And like it was done in Man of Steel, it's going to be a worldly threat, So, and that could be any number of them. Mongol, Brainiac, Zod for one, but he's been done a couple of times. You can do a few different things. So maybe go cosmic that way, and then do something a little more personal second time around, like an Elite story. Manchester Black, people challenging the way Superman does things, his effectiveness.
Mm-hmm. But so let's.
All right, I'm done. What are we?
No, I'm with you, James. That's what we need, man.
Let's migrate into our thoughts here about Superman for all seasons. Now, when did you guys first read this story?
The other day.
Really? You hadn't read it before?
No,
I only picked up Superman out. Doug, go ahead. Finish what you're saying. I'll come in. Jeff Loeb and Tim Sales are some of my favorite collaborators. But for some reason, I missed this story. I never got to read it. But I read the whole thing last night, and I was not disappointed.
Okay. James, when was the first time you read it?
I think about the book for the first time. It's one I'd seen for a long time and heard I should read, but I had never gotten it. But I bought the trade about a year ago.
See, I have read it. It's been a while, and I had read it like all in one sitting, and then I enjoyed it, and then through time, I had just I bought it digitally one time. I had a digital sale for it, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go ahead and buy it, and then I found it at Half Price Books for like $8, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and buy it. I like having physical comics. It's just,
me too.
It's one of those things like
I like having physical trades.
Yeah, like
I'm a little iffy. I'm still a little iffy on buying issues, but I'm still keeping up with a few.
I like having trades. I like having just the book to hold in my hand. Plus, I'm not a fan of like digital comics where it's panel by panel, because sometimes like I don't know. I just get tired of like touch. I just want to look at the page. I'd almost prefer it in a what do you call it? Just like a PDF form.
I'm with you on that. Sometimes when you are doing digital comics, you don't get the full effect of the story because it goes panel by panel, and sometimes you don't get to see the full scene right away, and where you're like, oh, okay. Like there's a scene in the comic where his dad's talking to him, and they're seeing that final sunset, and the way Tim Sale did it, he did it as, one big spread of that. And in the panel, you don't see it. It just goes to text box, and then you eventually see the spread. So I'm with you on that.
So I mean, I haven't read it in a while. I've been wanting to reread it, and I've been wanting to actually do this kind of split up for like a while now. But so let's dive into the book, shall we? The first thing is that I really like is it starts off. It's narrated by Pa Kent. I like that we're getting Pa's perspective, and it's him telling us the story.
No, a lot of Superman stories, it comes straight from Clark's perspective, and what I really enjoyed about this is each chapter is a different perspective of someone else in his life, and I like that John Kent here was much older, because you kind of get this older man's wisdom to start off. You get this, this is my son, and
the old man would say that.
Mm-hmm. He says,
"Yeah,
a man's son, my son,
hey.
Clark."
Yes. But this was the inspiration for Smallville, so let it go.
I like the way it just looks at, Jonathan talking about what it means for him and Clark, and he's telling us as we see him working, plowing, and he hits a rock, and he's trying to get that rock out, and Clark just lifts it up, and
he's like, "Where do you want it, Dad?" And John says, "The boy's got a lot of Martha in him, and let's leave it at that."
That look he gives him, though, when he lifts the rock up.
The
way he's drawn, it's like, is he frustrated at Clark that he can do that, or is he frustrated that he's an old man now, and even with a crowbar or even with a pry bar, he couldn't get it to budge.
And I feel like it's some of the latter, like he's getting older, because there's a line coming up here soon, and we'll get to it, where he references how many years have passed. We see them at dinner with Lana, and, I like the idea of spring. Like, we start our story in spring, and the idea that things are growing, maturing, changing. And this is all about Clark finishing school and growing out of being the homebody. Like, Clark's insecurities about himself, and then we have Martha and Jonathan on the porch, and he's telling her, and like in this, spring is about growth and change, and we see that Clark's powers are coming more to fruition at this time. And
because he develops his X-ray vision he pretty much develops his X-ray vision while he's sitting in the diner.
Here
he remembers
Jonathan and Mark are talking, and she mentions he'll hear us, and he's like, he's on the other side of the house, and we follow the panels as they're still talking to him sitting in his room. He says, how could he possibly hear us? And we know he's listening to everything that they're saying.
Right. And then in the diner, he it seems like he sees through the wall or something, or maybe he's hearing it, and that's when he realizes he forgot to get his hair cut, and then he has the X-ray vision, and he sees back into the diner of Pete and Lana, and he's obviously gotten his hair cut previously, otherwise he wouldn't be going to the barber, and then his hair snaps the scissors. Exactly. So even his invulnerability is just beginning.
See, and to step back a second, I like this double page spread of Clark walking with Pete and Lana. Of just, we really get some detail of the town and The issue of like Lana, the way she looks and she's drawn, like she is infatuated with Clark, and it always seems like Clark is like looking off in the distance. And you even have Jonathan at the top in his narration. Sometimes when the corn was planted, it shot up too soon. The roots hadn't taken hold, so the stalk supports its own weight. The corn would turn sour. I don't know if Clark knew how lucky he was growing up in a place like Smallville. Clark had known Lana Lang his whole life. Her Aunt Ruth, difficult as it was, raised her. And then he says, Martha always said Lana had her cap on being with Clark, but I never saw it. So Lana just plans on life with Clark, and he knows something more is going on. And then I like the art when they go into the diner, just how busy it is, how much detail of just the life of Smallville that we get. Everybody's a little...
It was very... This whole comic is very Norman Rockwell, and that's what Tim was definitely going for.
It is. And we got to look at the time, and this definitely feels like it's taking place in the 50s, and I love when they're talking, and Lana says, do you really think there's a Lex Luthor? Or is it somebody the newspapers made up? And then Clark has this, oh my gosh, I need a haircut. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like I need a haircut. Like that's his big thing, and it just shows how much of a kind of small town it is. Like
he was having a Sheldon moment. He missed his haircut by 2 days, and now he's freaking out.
Yeah, he comes busting in, and he says, "Save, no, not to worry, Clark. Held a seat for you." And he sits down, and like you said, that's where he starts to experience his X-ray vision, the scissors snap. And when we get little comments about the people of the town, Clark runs home, and we get these, pictures of him running next to the train. And
we get a Superman the movie reference of him racing in front of a train. Racing and jumping in front of a train.
No Yahoo, though.
Well, thank goodness.
So, did you guys notice another reference in here? When Pete Ross goes into the soda shop or diner, if you will, and he touches that elephant, he says, "I wish I had $1 million." And me being the geek guy I am, that was a total reference to "It's a Wonderful Life."
Yep,
with George Bailey as a kid.
I wish he would have said "hot dog" to finish it off.
Hot dog. Absolutely.
I like when we get Clark back home. He's sitting there, and Ma says to him, "Jonathan, he's been standing out there all alone," and he just says, "I'll handle it, Martha." He walks out there and he just says, "Pa, I'm scared." They don't know what to say. They really don't know what to do. And we get a whole page of just Jonathan talking and almost lamenting over having this child, and he does not know what to do with this child. Where Clark is in his life right now. And he says, all I could promise Clark was that his mother and I would love him. And I mean, that's sometimes as a parent, it's all you really can do. It's like, I got your back, kid.
And you hope that's enough,
Mm-hmm. And
that love helps to keep them on the straight and narrow, on the right path.
And then the next part is a Superman staple. I feel like when you're in Smallville, you got to have a tornado.
Well, it's Kansas. If you don't have a tornado in Kansas, you're doing something wrong.
And it's kind of crazy because it starts spinning, and crazy because we have Clark just kind of standing there seeing it, and this is like he gets sucked up. And he's yelling, "Pa, Pa!" And then he's like, "I can handle this. I know I can." And we see him basically save the gas station worker that we met earlier. And we have a narration from Pa that says, "But I believe in the wild trouble of that moment, our son became a man." And he saved the guy, and we see like Smallville all wrecked from the tornado, and he's like, Clark Kent, my head's still spinning. Did you fly down? And we all know what really happened. And the next scene is Clark running home and finding his parents okay.
Yeah, when I was reading this, I really wondered if Jonathan was going to get sucked up in this tornado, and then Man of Steel, took that part. But it was good to know they were okay.
Yeah,
I mean, nice.
I always think, what's interesting about this story is because you're kind of being told it through a narrator, it allows the events to move much quicker than if we were trying to be just kind of telling the story, like if it was all from Clark's point of view. And it's interesting that in the short band of this story, we were introduced that he had strength, and then we got hearing, vision, invulnerability, speed, and flight, like really quick. And we have Clark flying and bringing the tractor down, and he says, "I could have done more." And Jonathan says, what he said, the look in his eyes, I could have done more.
And he says, I know my son, it would haunt him from that day on. Like, my gosh, Jeff Loeb, man, he just knows how to write, man.
And I agree, like he does. And, this book is a great kind of template for just building a good Superman story and like the beats to hit. And I think it's interesting because here we have another example of Clark seeking advice from a pastor, and he's, and the first thing, I like this quote. He says, "The Lord may have given us the tools, but it's man who has to fix it." And that's like putting in perspective, like, what tools does Clark have? What can he do to fix things, to work on things? And he says, they're talking, and of course the pastor has to go help rebuild some things. And Clark says, but what if there was one? We each do what we're able to, Clark, some less, some more. But when the Almighty sets a course, nothing any man can do about it. And he says, but what if there was one? And it's just interesting, like spring and what Clark is, where his focus is. Of course, Clark graduates and everyone's talking about where they want to go. So, we're kind of looking at Clark about 18 years old right now, And Jonathan talks about getting the suitcase and their time coming short. And then Clark takes Lana into the field. I thought this was just kind of interesting.
Like, do you think that he should do you think that he should have told Lana? Like just, I don't know. I always look at this, Clark and Lana thing, and I know that she was his like best friend growing up, and she just loved him so much. But so do you think like him telling her that, hey, this is who I really am, like that's just a moment of full closure for that Lana she can't be with him, like this guy has more important things to do? Because then on the other side, like Lois is good enough for him. Like why couldn't Lana? I don't know. I don't
like your train of thought.
What I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, because it's one in the context of the story, because the way we're moving, the pacing, and the way it's designed, him telling her works, because it was always supposed to be in the comics like Lana was like one of the first people he showed his powers and stuff to, and demonstrated it too, and like you said, like it shows that he is in this story. Lana is very much like I'm going to stay at Smallville. Smallville's my home. And he's trying to show, like, I'm bigger than Smallville. Like, I have to go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, with you. So I don't know, you're along the lines of, Lois is good enough, maybe Lana isn't or something.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get across. Like,
I more or less think it's not Lana's not good enough. It's more that at this point in his life, he's trying to figure out, who he is and what he's meant to do and what he can do. And, for him, she's a good friend. As Tyler was saying, how she was, in a lot of stories over the years, Lana's loved him, wanted more from him. And he was more, friendly with her. Maybe for reasons, that they kind of, used to nauseum in Smallville, where he was afraid of what he could do if he were to get close to somebody. So, keeping a distance for a relationship from her that way. But he was looking up and above, and he was looking over her and past her at the time. And then by the time he meets Lois, then it's too late for Lana.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you just kind of look in your own life about stuff like, there's people in your past that, yeah, maybe they were a great person at the time or someone you could have been with, but you had to grow into you and, you had something to do and that you just kind of grew apart or things change, One thing that I always said that in the early episodes of Smallville, when you met Chloe, was if you combine Chloe and Lana together, that's where you get Lois. And that kind of showed where Clark was. Like, Lois ends up being like the dream girl, but also his best friend.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that show brought in Lois and, all that fun stuff. But in the early, first 3 seasons, you can kind of see why the idea of Lois Lane Clark would fall in love with. And it's the same thing. Like, it's like he loves Lana, but yet he's not. In this, he cares for her and everything, but she's in love with him, but he doesn't know himself yet. Because he, like you said, he has to figure out what he wants to do. And in the next page, we're getting him leaving Smallville, and his mom's telling him you can do whatever you want. And you have that panel of Jonathan standing out there looking in the distance. And I love this. He said, my stomach rumbled all day long. Martha and I had done our job. We brought him up right. And all that means to me now was our only son was old enough to say goodbye. It's really about a dad letting go of his son. I mean, even if he's not Superman, just the idea that every father one day has to let go of their child. Their child will be an adult, and they will move on. And have you done your job? Have you set them up? And we have, like you said, here's that double-page spread of Clark on the left, looking at the sunset, Jonathan on the right, looking at the sunset. And then when we turn the page, we are now officially in Metropolis, and it says, time passes, the country mouse leaves Smallville and becomes a city mouse. And we just get a cityscape. And in all essence, what's funny is this story, if you think about it, it's Superman for All Seasons, is a year one story. Even though here we are, we're in spring, and in the next page, he's at the Daily Planet. We've skipped some stuff, but it's kind of interesting, like, how much time has passed in a way, because I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the book ends with Luthor saying it's going to be a long, hot summer. So it's still spring, the same spring? You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know.
Right. It's kind of like, does he go from Smallville to Metropolis? He looks a little older, though, when you see him next. You know?
I say yes, but once again, we kind of got that, like, he's now kind of like putting the Clark persona on and everything. So I don't know, but it's kind of interesting, you know?
Yeah, it could just be the glasses and the slick back hair and then the spit curl.
Because we got Mr. White yelling about stuff, and we meet our Lois, we meet our Jimmy. Lois, you know, we're introduced to her, and then we meet Lex is taking her out. And, you know, the first panel is a bunch of newspapers that says, Superman, a new hero, but we haven't seen him do anything, which is interesting. Like, there's no so much of the stereotypical helicopter rescue that we get in, like, Superman's first night out type adventures, you know? And we have Lex putting Lois in the car. We have Lex with red hair, older looking Lex. But I actually really like the way we first meet Superman in this. I like that we just have a child playing somewhere he shouldn't be, innocent, chasing a cat on a ledge of a building because he lives in the city, and he starts to fall, and Superman catches him. And I love the innocence of, wow, cool costume, and he just says thanks, and then we get the first page of Superman. He says, my mom made it for me. And I mean, and that's like, it's such just an awesome shot of their Superman. He just saved the kid. And then when we turn the page, you know, we have Superman flying, Luthor looking out at him, and, you know, we still have a little bit from Jonathan about, we worry about our son. Is he eating right? Is he making friends? That'll stay out of harm's way, even if he is Superman. And then we have, like, Luthor watching him, and the closing thing is, it's going to be a long, hot summer. And it's just interesting because, you know, we don't, that in spring, it's all about Clark, and then we get just a touch of Superman set up for what the next chapter would be. And I think the storytelling is so simple by using the different narrator. So it's something that we'll, you know, expand upon as we go. But I don't know. I always love in Superman stories, like we talked about, like the origin, and maybe not so much the origin, but just I liked the Smallville time. You know, so.
Yeah, it's really cool to see this, how small Smallville is in this story, and you know, Pa narrating, everybody knows everybody, and just from a parent's point of view, like the last page of narration from him of, you know, at the end of the day, we're not all that different. I'm not sure we're all that different from any other parents. We worry about our son, that he's eating right, that he's making friends, that he'll stay out of harm's way, even if he is Superman. You know, it's like all those stories where Superman goes home and Martha Kent is asking him, have you been eating? You look thin or whatever, and he's, Mom, I'm Superman. Like, a mother knows.
That's always one thing I loved about Lois and Clark, the TV series, was just the fun we got to have with the parents and their son. Like, you know,
yeah. Like, I've understood over the years that from a long time ago, when he was found by an elderly couple. So by the time he grew up, his parents were old. His dad either have died or mostly has died, and his ma was real old. Mm-hmm. I like over the years that they found him as more of a middle-aged couple, a younger middle-aged couple. And by the time he's grown, they're adults. I like the stories where Jonathan's still alive and he's got interactions with both of his parents.
I do too. I like the idea of the Kents being like mid-30s. Like when they find him, kind of that idea of they're struggling with, okay, we're about to be, are we getting to be too old that we can't have kids? Like they're struggling with, we're not young anymore. We're starting to get older, and they're not old parents, but like they're the kind of parents that, when the son's in school, a lot of the other parents will be younger than them, but they're not grandparents yet. They're not that old.
While I do love the older John and Martha and Lois and Clark, I can relate more to those mid-30s ones, like in Smallville and stuff. And I guess I'd have to say I like the mid-30 ones when they find Clark in the mid-30s, because that's where I'm at.
I mean, Clark being 10 and John being 45, and Clark turning 15, Jonathan's 50, just where he's a little older, but he's still not grandpa, so that when Clark's 30-year-old man, then Jonathan's he's older, but he's still he's like in his 60s, so he's older, but anyways, but so what would you guys rate just the spring part, just if you had just read this issue by itself, not knowing that there was more to come, how would you feel about this story?
I really like it. It's from the narration is great. The coming from Pa Kent, just being a father, the Clark learning, it goes by really quick. He learns a lot about himself really quick and what he's able to do, and it just shows him being a good person and wanting to do more. It's really good. It's definitely the heart of Superman, coming from the very beginning. And it doesn't have to be they don't show anything about him. They don't show anything about Krypton or him being a baby. All they do is mention the rocket. And you're with Clark right now.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I like that about it.
I do too.
Even being an origin story, it's just about Clark right now. You're with him right now. There's only a mention, and you move on.
Yeah, because it goes back to that, that it's coming from his father and the idea of spring and change. Like, we're experiencing spring, the time of rebirth, life, renewal, and change, and that's what Clark's doing. Brian, your thoughts?
I give it probably a 9 out of 10. Everything that needs to be hit is hit. We got this kid that lives with his older parents. He's going through some serious changes, and he's realizing that I can't stay here, that I'm meant for more. And when John says this is when he became a man, when he rescued the gas station attendant, and he's realizing that I can do all this stuff, but I need to do more. And it carries that emotional weight. It shows that simplicity of Smallville, and what could have happened to him if he would just stayed in Smallville. It has emotional toll. It has, where are we going to go from here? It has the real heart of Superman, and that's why I rate it high. It's exactly what it needs to be, and it leaves you wanting more to see, like, okay, so how does he when he starts being Superman, where do we go from here? I really loved it.
And so my last question to you guys, what are your thoughts on just the drawing style of Superman himself? A lot of people have complained over time. Hey, look who's here. You want to say hi?
Hi, guys. Hi.
Hey, Solo.
What up, buddy?
So, how do you feel there's been a lot of speculation, or not speculation, a lot of criticism, of just the way Tim drew Clark and drew Superman. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, he's massive. He's a mountain of a man in this. He towers over everybody. When he's sitting next to his father, on the porch.
He's just a big.
When he's with Lana, yeah, he's just, when he's sitting with his mom, he's just enormous. When he's standing with his dad, when he's standing with Lana, yeah, I mean, that, when you think of just a big ass country boy, that's what they drew him like.
Exactly. And that's what he said. He drew him like a corn-fed farm boy. Big, works on the farm. But yeah, I mean, he's a hoss. He is a hoss. And I think there's some pictures in here, the way that they draw him, I like better than some panels. But yeah, I don't mind it. We've seen enough different interpretations of the character, of the way that he draws, and I mean, there's some I don't particularly like the way he looks in that panel, but overall, I'm okay with it.
There are some pictures where he looks a little too big. He kind of looks a little like some pictures he looks a little fat in the face. But I was looking through the pages here, and one that stands out to me really, really good is right after the tornado. He's hugging his parents, and he is definitely towering over them. But the way it's drawn by Tim, it's like, this guy is going to protect you. This big old hoss, this big old farm boy, he's going to protect you. It's like he can hold the whole world in his hands and protect it all. And all this more that he can do, he's going to be able to handle it. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that's what Jeff and Tim were going for here.
I agree. I mean, like I said, I think it really plays into the story that we're telling. So that is Superman for All Seasons Spring. And here, when the season changes, we will do summer. We will come back when it's summertime. But until then, you just have to wait, dear readers and listeners.
Well, in our Ohio weather, I mean, summer can start tomorrow, and then winter will start maybe next Wednesday.
True, but I'm going to go by... So, James, why don't you give us a summary breakdown of the episode, and we'll go from there.
Supergirl, Season 5, Episode 15, Reality Bytes. Nia's roommate is attacked by a man targeting Dreamer. Dreamer refuses to give in to the man's threats and puts herself in the line of fire to stop him. Alex, Jean, and Kelly attempt to rescue a man stuck inside a virtual reality game.
All right. Pretty, simple. But I do... So what we'll do here is we'll follow the characters, okay? So this is definitely very Supergirl in the background, so we'll talk about her first. The beginning of the episode, when we first meet Supergirl, she's training. It feels like she's training in a virtual simulation, but no, just randomly, her and Nia stop a Dominator. It's just random. And that was weird. But she decides she's
the Dominator's the Dominator's CG this episode kind of looked cheap.
Yeah, it did.
Yep,
it did. But we let it slide just because they're trying to give us more than they can always afford, and I respect that.
Yeah.
But then we see that Kara's going on a date with William. And she comes in and tells Alex, like, which color? And I'm like, Kara Danvers should never wear blue. Just throwing that out there. Kara should never wear blue.
Well, that's why when she went out on the date, she was wearing purple.
Exactly. She needs to never wear her colors. But really, I mean, she appears in a scene to comfort Nia after the events. And that's one of the, she's there, and then she appears at the end, and we see her play pool with William, where basically she puts every ball in the pocket, and then she gives Nia a speech, and we'll get there. But really, she did not play a large role in this episode at all.
No, Supergirl, yeah, she was backseat in this episode, most of it.
The next through line here, so we have Alex. So when the episode opens, we're opening another episode with somebody using the new Obsidian. And like I've said before, they're basically building the Matrix.
Which is like 2 weeks ago or something prior to, was it 2 weeks or 2 months ago prior to Obsidian's release, prior to its rollout?
Right. It was 2 something. I missed the...
It was 2 weeks or 2 months prior.
Because even in this, I had to think back.
I think it's 2 weeks.
Did they roll it out? Because they're about to launch like the next upgrade to it. And I couldn't remember if they actually were able to launch the first round of Obsidian virtual reality, because they're working on making it better in the next level. Because that's what Kelly is testing at the beginning.
Well, they said that they said that they rolled out the first one, and oh gosh, who said that they tested it? I think Gemma said that she tested it or something. I might be wrong, but this is like the second round, and this is where it's getting like toxic, and things are affecting them in real life more, and they can't hit the fall safe.
So we get that. Well,
yeah, that's a bug that was in it before it was released, before its rollout.
And we meet Mr. Bates, and that's kind of where the episode ends, and then it jumps forward, and then we have Alex training with Jean using her new Martian weapon, and training's not going as well as she wants. And we learn that Jean gets a case where they have to track down this guy's brother. And in it, Alex, is going to go in to the virtual reality part to find this guy because he's trapped in virtual reality. And she goes into, what do they call it? Virtual Vegas.
Yeah.
And before she gets there, we definitely get a tease for next week's episode. We see a quick glimpse of Alex in a potential suit that we'll see next week. And Jean goes searching for the man's physical body, because we know his he's in the virtual reality somewhere, but where is his physical body? And when Alex rescues some people that are basically trapped inside like an escape room, since escape rooms are a thing in the real world, I guess they are in the virtual world, they talk about the person named Richard, which leaves Jean to Opal City. Now, boys, who's out of Opal City?
Oh, who's out of Opal City? Because I heard that name and I was like, who's from Opal City? So offhand, I don't recall.
Bryan, anything? Nope. Okay. The question, if I'm not mistaken, now I'm second guessing myself.
Starman.
Is it Starman? I thought it was the question too, or is that Hub City? Did I get Hub City wrong?
I think Hub City. Hub City sounds familiar for the question.
But there was also multiple questions.
Well, Renee Montoya is from Gotham, so and Vic Sage, I think, is from Hub City. But Opal City is Starman, and it's probably where we're going to be in Stargirl.
Probably. So
this coming late spring.
Yeah, Opal City is definitely Starman. My bad.
But so my thing is, I put notes here. The question is a character that should have appeared in the Arrowverse by now. And we find out that virtual reality is now being used. People are having virtual affairs, and this man found out his wife was having basically a virtual affair, and Alex, is trying to get the guy out. We find out it's Mr. Bates, who's a computer programmer. His name was Richard Bates. Should have been like Patrick
Norman
or Norman Bates. But, and then, eventually Alice gets out. She saves the guy. But what kills me is Kelly's like, oh, there's so many moral and ethical things about VR that we just didn't think about. And I'm like, really? Like, this wasn't something that was addressed? Or, like, how people would use this type of virtual reality? Like,
she's a psychiatrist by trade. Like, the reason she's involved in Obsidian is because of her psychotherapist background. I would have assumed that it was her job to consider the implications on what people would or could use this for. So it's pretty lazy writing, I feel, just with her saying that this, we didn't think of this. Like, no, like that was your job.
Yeah, like
that's why you were there. So
if you can do it, it's kind of like if you can do it in the real world, you're going to do it in the virtual world, and you'll probably, the virtual world will also give people freedom to do stuff that they may not have been able to do in the real world. So it brings up a whole lot of moral and ethical questions,
like creating this escape room, this escape mansion, where you could basically torture somebody without really causing them a physical damage at the time. I mean, what the damage you do to their psyche is something completely different, and that's what they discuss here. But yeah, it's pretty interesting though how the guy they were testing in the beginning and the fail-safe button disappeared. The glitch happened to him. This guy was a friggin' computer engineer, and he was the one who it happened to, so he was able to recreate it in his own little quarter of the virtual reality and trap people there.
It was kind of just like a sick coincidence.
Right.
So, that wraps up kind of that angle. We got no Lena in this episode, no Lex, no Andrea Rojas in this episode. So,
well, she could have been there. She's a shadow. she could have been hiding in every corner of the shot.
I mean, it is possible. So now we're going to talk about our main focus, which is the Dreamer storyline. So I will say this episode, I think, would have benefited had they started building this up for the past few episodes.
Even if they would have put something in the last episode.
Like if they would have, say, 2 episodes ago, Mia catches on through the media about trans people being murdered, or like one of her people of her community says something, and like it's like a serial killer for trans people, or like she kind of starts to piece stuff together, and she has this kind of inkling, and we see it kind of building, and then this is where it
or
comes
just something about transphobic people,
because it feels like there's a lot of emotion, a lot thrown at us in this episode where she talks about her community, her people, and it's like, but you've been absent for so much. Like the last episode, she just appeared out of nowhere at the end. And we even talked about how all of a sudden, she just kind of arrived, which, I mean, it makes sense. But at the same time, like her as a character is just absent from the story. So
Yeah.
I really think it could have been a really kind of neat thing to build up this kind of idea that.
And even mostly from the episode before, which was It's a Super Life, which is the 100th episode. She wasn't involved in that one either.
And that one's okay. You know what I'm saying? But if we had this like plot thread for like a story of Nia trying to discover that somebody she catches waves, or we had gotten introduced to her friend sooner, because it's one of those things where all of a sudden she has this friend that she's super close with that we've never met, that all of a sudden has a trauma because she.
No, we met her.
Did we?
That's her roommate.
Maybe I just forget.
That's her roommate. We've seen her roommate before. I don't recall seeing her roommate. Was it this season or was it last season?
Maybe that's what it is. It's just there's just been so much. We've had Crisis and everything.
Yeah, it's her roommate. She's been there. I'm thinking it was last season when we were more getting introduced to her, because she was involved, I think, more before she became Dreamer.
Maybe that's what it was, but maybe then in that same instant, this episode may have worked better last season, because, she says something to Kara about her people and all this being hated. Wasn't all last season about hating aliens and targeting aliens and outing aliens and killing aliens? And, wasn't it all about alien death?
Right.
So, and I mean that affects Dreamer too, but I'm just saying, like, it just seems like in the context of the character, like Dreamer went from like very timid to all of a sudden like, I'm going to murder this person. And I think that's a huge step. Like, I would have liked to seen some more build, some character develop to like get her to that point, but she just went from 0 to 100 like a Vin Diesel race, just.
Well, I mean, last season, like, she was involved. I mean, she was becoming Dreamer. That was part of her story arc last season, but she was also involved as being an alien involved in this story, or part alien. She's part alien, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was how she was being, that's how prejudice was aimed towards her as being part alien. But in this episode, like, they attack her personally, as a trans woman, which, I mean, can be, even tougher, because the stigma of being that person, of the phobia of the LGBT community.
No, I'm following.
It's just,
like, yeah. I mean, I guess I just would have liked some.
So,
I guess I would have liked this maybe to be a 2-parter or something, like just the storyline getting there.
Right.
It just seemed very like it was a one and done, but I think it could have benefited from a little bit more development. And first of all, James, no matter who you are, if you're meeting somebody from the internet that you've never met and they text you to meet them out back, no.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, like,
meet them out back in the alley.
I mean, I understand desperation and desperate people, but like, seriously, you're in a club and this person says, "Meet me out back." Don't just meet them.
No,
out.
I'm at the bar surrounded by people. You meet me at the bar. Yeah.
So, of course.
Yeah. She's just, and she's going through a lot with Brainy not being there either. He was, like she had said in this episode, he was there from the beginning. He was very supportive. He helped her to develop her abilities. He was her boyfriend, and then he just ditched her. He it was just over like that without any real explanation. So, she's hurting, and she's hurting, and she's depressed, and then she's attacked personally, and not just about, and she's attacked personally on her, on how she identifies and what she how she is. So it's kind of compiled. And then they attack her friend, her roommate,
It's all valid point. I mean, like story beats. I just wish to give it a little bit more, because it just seemed like it came out so quickly. I do like how
right. Well, we've discussed the let some things breathe, cut some things down. Like, it seems like they get something like this, and then they ram it at you real fast and hard. They don't give it room to breathe. And then there's other things where they're like, let's just stretch it out as far as we can. It's like, exactly. That's probably something you can ram home. And
exactly. Like Brainy. My one thing is, I think Brainy could have found this guy a lot faster, because we get Nia basically puts herself out there as bait to confront this guy, and I think what Brainy probably could have found him faster. But Brainy does pull up all the information on people who are part of anti-trans hate groups that are threatening them, taking credit for murders, and finds the clues and stuff. And he turns over this huge file to the police about what's going on, and he does this without the knowledge of anyone else knowing. And I like that, because I like the story arc with Brainy right now. I like that he's having problems. I like a little bit of the different characterization of Brainy, just to kind of change it up, because things, like we said, can get stagnant. And then, so we get the big climax comes where Dreamer has the dude by the neck, and she could kill him. And Kara shows up, talks her out of it, and then later Nia's on the balcony at Catco, and Kara shows up. Well, let me see. Supergirl shows up, talks her out of it, and then Kara shows up and talks to Nia. And, she has a breakdown about how she didn't want to be a killer, but what that guy did to her and what that meant to her. And it's impactful. I mean, look, I we all have our own belief systems or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's about love and compassion, man, for all people. No matter what you believe, your gender, your race, your creed, it should be about I have enough respect and compassion to you as another human being. Hate is never the way. And I think that it's what's sad is that people, just because someone is different than them, will decide to degrade them as a human person and hate them. And that's heartbreaking that, people suffer because of just other people's hate for no reason to them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get...
Yeah, that's heavily prevalent, unfortunately.
I'm not going to get lecture. I'm not going to get on a soapbox and preach or any political or anything. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, we're all human and we should all love and respect each other. It's just that we are people. We all are on a journey that's going to end the same way.
Yeah. The fact that beliefs are different, this is no reason to hate. People are allowed to believe different things. People are allowed to have different opinions, and people are allowed to be who they are and like who they like and enjoy what they like. And, you need to, as long as it's not, hate filled and hurting people, it's not hurting you that somebody else is doing something that you particularly don't believe in. But to hate on that is just, it's sickening.
And that this episode ends on a weird spot. And I'm not going to I've seen a lot of people theorize about how it ends and why they did this. And I'm not going to get political, because we just talked about people have their own opinions, so, but it ends, and it makes me sad, because I feel like it's a disservice to the character. But we find out that Jeremiah Danvers is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Alex gets a call, and he's killed off screen, and we find out he's dead, and it ends with Alex telling Kara, and it kind of sucks, and that we didn't get kind of one of those episodes where they show up, he's back. It could have been a really great, having the parents back, and then Jeremiah dies in some act or whatever, but he is killed off screen, and that's the end of Jeremiah, and we'll see.
Yeah, if he would have gone out in a heroic way and been killed and had an impactful death scene.
But maybe that's one thing that drives Alex into the virtual world next episode. And as far as I know, the next episode is coming out, and then I think the episode after that is coming out as well, but that could change.
Yeah, as of right now, it looks like March 22nd and March 29th is episode 16 and 17.
So, we don't...
Alex in Wonderland and Deus Lex Machina.
And then we don't know how many episodes are left that were not filmed, what we'll be getting in this season. So,
yeah,
let's take it.
If it was shortened to 20 and they still had episodes to film, they may have 3 episodes yet to film before the shutdown was done.
But it also...
Or before the shutdown was made.
But it also kind of goes back to sometimes with production schedules, like they might have shot stuff for an episode that before they shot stuff for an episode that airs. So like they might have shot something for like episode 20, or episode 20 might be done, but they haven't shot 18 or 19. You know what I'm saying? Not just thinking those numbers, but like, sometimes stuff's out of order depending on scheduling, people, availability. You know what I'm saying? So we don't know what's actually been completed. But yeah.
Yeah. So going back to, yeah, it really does. Especially in the world we're living in today. We're all quarantined.
This is where virtual reality, everyone will be like, yeah, hook me up, man.
Right. Virtual reality would be huge right now. But, we were talking about Brainy. So a couple of things on Brainy this episode. He's still, he still cares about these people, especially Nia. After this happens, he's keeping tabs, and he found all this information on these hate groups that he turned over to the police. My one question is, he's the director of the DEO, so why is he working from a desk in the middle of the room like he's still just the computer IT guy? Why is he not in his own office being able to find this stuff, worried about hiding it from everybody when his computer should be facing him in an office where nobody can see from the other side of the desk?
Yes.
That's one.
I almost wanted him to show up. Like, 'cause, he's supposed to be more techno-organic, but they're kind of done him a little bit more organic and everything. So,
well, isn't Brainiac 5 an organic being? As it's moved farther on from early Brainiac, because Brainiac turned himself to more technological than organic. He was an organic being and turned himself into more of a technological being and was more technology driven. But as time progressed and in the future, Brainiac 5 is a purely, mainly organic being, isn't he?
And that's what I thought, but I've read somewhere it's both, but that's how I thought, because I almost wanted like Brainiac just to show up like at the haters and like almost like violently, like almost see him snap in a way, like he's just so angry that he shows up, beats these haters down to like almost nothing, like wearing like some sort of mask, kind of like he just snapped, and all of his frustration he released on these people. But it was, yeah. But any other last thoughts?
No, I enjoyed this episode. I do. It does suck that they killed Jeremiah off screen the way they did. And political views being one thing, and even if you're outspoken, that is dumb, especially being political views, to make it so a person cannot reprise their character. Now, if unfortunately he had done something, whatever, Cosby or Masterson or frickin' Spacey, or, if he'd have done something like that, or Weinstein or some crap, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he'd have done something like that, by all means, you know what I mean? Chop his damn legs out from underneath him, and he can't reprise his role as the character. But, even being just outspoken as a supporter of Trump, you know what I mean? Like, and killing his character off screen, basically, he cannot reprise, like basically saying it on TV, like, no, he's not coming back because of, that's pretty terrible.
I agree.
So it's a disservice to the character on screen. I don't think they should have done that to the actor just because of beliefs. I mean, that's a possibility of why this has happened. Because we obviously know that the people who write on these shows do not believe the same thing. I mean, you would never,
right.
The way that they write these shows is completely opposite. You can tell that.
And that's what,
so it just sucks, to not be able to see him again, on the show. I mean, I don't care about his political views. If that were to be the case, it's not typically how I judge somebody.
Yep.
Even though, and just like we were talking, their beliefs may be stupid, but, it's not something to hate on them for and, to hate somebody for. So,
yeah, I hate when they kind of kill characters off screen. I feel like that's always reserved for those instances where the actor has passed or something like that has occurred, where you're trying to respect the character, trying to respect what had happened, but you're trying to find a safe way of doing it, kind of like with Virgil Swan on Smallville.
Right. Who else? There's been a couple. That's happened a couple of times. I mean, heck, Riverdale, Luke Perry passed away.
Exactly.
So yeah, they try to do something good with it. And I don't know. It doesn't really feel that way. He was only in a little bit back in season 2, and he hasn't been back since.
And he was such a big part of like the mystery of season 1, but
yeah. And then he was there in season 2. I don't know. It's just
it just sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a supporter myself, and I know you're not, but still, that's a stupid reason if that were to be the case of why he was written off. It does do a disservice to the character, and if they are, I don't know, it's just to do that to the actor as well. I mean, were you never getting him back? Were you planning on getting him back? Do you decide not to get him back?
Right. I mean, but
hopefully as a story point, it will be something strong and driving in the next episode or so to come, especially for Alex. For Kara, it is her adopted father, and there's no, they were very strong, in trying to find him and loving him in the past in other episodes, back from season 2 and stuff. But this, that is, Alex's father. She was born and raised, and you know, they lost him, and then they found him, and then, you know, he was just gone, but now confirmed dead. So yeah, that's definitely going to be something strong, something hard that Alex has to deal with personally.
And we'll just wait and see what happens with, you know, next week's episode. And until then, good listeners,
Look up in the sky.
Look up in the sky.
Look at the sky.